Parkinson's is a condition that affects the whole body and is a combination of symptoms, some of which you can see and some of which are hidden. Time, of course, does not permit me to go into every symptom today, so I will touch on a few of the physical symptoms, starting with the tips of your head.
Helen Wong
has joined the conference.
Everyone with Parkinson's is different, so just because I mention a symptom, and it is not one of your symptoms, it does not mean that you will definitely eventually have the symptom. Think of it as a session like your information toolkit. Just like you have a spare tire and a jack in the trunk of your car, in case you get a flat, you may never get that flat. But you may never need to use this information. It's nice to know just in case it does come up.
Wanda Thompson.
It would be really too bad.
Has joined the conference.
Wasted precious time waiting for any new symptoms to arise. You have all you can do to handle the symptoms you currently have. So don't waste your time waiting for the other shoe to drop. Regardless of where you live in this world, there are no laboratory or imaging tests that prove conclusively that you have Parkinson's. Diagnosis is based on what you tell your doctor and what the doctor observes during a neurological examination. The doctor will be looking for the most common characteristic symptoms of Parkinson's, or a trembling that you cannot control voluntarily. 30% of people with Parkinson's
has joined the conference.
Have a tremor, but for those who do, it is often the initial symptom. Another common symptom is rigidity or stiffness of the muscles. Symptom can cause you to lose your ability to make rapid or spontaneous movements. Akinesia is a fancy medical term, and it really is just another symptom that means lack of movement or slowness in starting and maintaining movement. For example, you may find it difficult after you
has joined the conference
to begin walking right away, or you may have a shuffle and your walking may be slower. A better word for this slowness of movement is bradykinesia. Brady means slow, kinesia is movement. And that's slowing down rather than the complete loss of movement. Many people with Parkinson's tell me they're now living in the slow lane rather than the express. Frankly, as someone who drives on the 401 every day, I would prefer often to drive in the slower lane. But this is not something that has been your choice. Postural instability is usually a later stage symptom, but it involves problems with balance and the risk of falling. So, put these symptoms together under one: tremor, R for rigidity, A for akinesia or slowness of movement, and P, problems with balance and posture. Spell the acronym or word TRAP. People with Parkinson's often tell me they feel trapped in their bodies. You can't move how, when, where you would like to when it's your choice to do so. Why did these symptoms develop in the first place? Well, for some, unfortunately, as yet not well understood reason, some brain cells are slowly, prematurely, but progressively getting injured, and then they get sicker and eventually die. One of the areas of the brain where this cell death takes place is the area that is responsible for control and regulation of movement by producing a chemical called dopamine, which is a messenger, I should say. So it stands to reason that people with Parkinson's have tremor, stiff muscles, and are slower to move because they have problems with rapid, smooth, coordinated, spontaneous muscles and movement as a result of this depletion of this chemical messenger called dopamine. That messenger is responsible for getting messages from that activity part of your brain that's responsible for spontaneous controlled movements to your muscles. So let's see if we can put things I've just talked about together and make some sense of it. We're going to start with the face. Some people have a decrease in their facial expression. It's like they're wearing a mask, so you can't tell what's really going on inside and how they feel. You can't tell if they're happy, sad, afraid, angry, surprised, or even disgusted. Well, guess what? There are 43 muscles in the face alone, which for most of us, without Parkinson's, are working in a coordinated and spontaneous way. But for people with Parkinson's, the loss of dopamine and messages aren't getting to the muscles. Is it any wonder why some of you can't show emotion? So the next time you tell a person with Parkinson's who isn't very demonstrative a joke, and they don't smile, don't assume they didn't get the joke or that they aren't killing themselves laughing on the inside, or possibly even upset if you've told them a sad story. Did you know that we rely 80% on nonverbal communication, such as movement, gestures, and facial expression? For some people with Parkinson's, the ability to communicate effectively is no longer possible, but don't assume for 1 minute that they don't have anything to contribute. That couldn't be further from the truth. So, moving on down. Speech and swallowing. Well, I lumped them together today because they actually involve the same group of muscles, which, once again, may not be getting the messages in a coordinated fashion from the brain. Most people with Parkinson's will experience changes in speech and swallowing at some point during the course of the condition. The same symptoms that occur in the muscles of the body, tremor, stiffness, and slow movement, can also occur in the muscles used in both speaking and swallowing. Symptoms include a soft voice, mumbled or fast speech, loss of facial expression, sound familiar, or possibly trouble with swallowing. Medications used to improve most symptoms are not always helpful with improving speech and swallowing, although some people report that their voices are indeed stronger when their Parkinson's medications are at their peak effectiveness. I can't go into great detail about all of this today, but if you are experiencing speech
Has joined the conference.
I encourage you to consult a qualified speech therapist,
Has joined the conference.
qualified speech language pathologist. One aspect of swallowing problems that I do want to mention today is drooling. Drooling occurs when there is a pooling of saliva in the mouth and saliva leaks out of the mouth. I think this is one of the most embarrassing problems for people with Parkinson's and severely impacts one's self-esteem and quality of life. The only other time in life when people have problems with drooling is when we're born.
Has joined the conference.
Good that babies have problems with drooling. It's not acceptable as
Has joined the conference.
however. People with Parkinson's don't make any more saliva than those of us without Parkinson's. But because mouth movements are decreased and messages aren't automatically getting from the brain to muscles to swallow, saliva builds up. And if you don't swallow, saliva has to go somewhere. And where is it going to go? Out the front and down your chin. Up to 1/2 of people with Parkinson's drool. That's a very high percentage and a very big problem. Some things that you can do to possibly help this is if you put something in your mouth, like chewing gum or a hard candy, this might act as a cue or a reminder to swallow. It is important to mention this problem to your doctor, however, if it is severe, as you can choke on saliva, which of course can turn into an emergency situation. Parkinson's medication can improve mouth movements and therefore can also improve swallowing and therefore decrease drooling. But some Parkinson's medications also cause dry mouth. Man, you can't win for losing sometimes. So, try the hard candy or the gum, as this can also provide some lubrication for your mouth. There are other medications that can sometimes help if drooling is severe. We can talk about some of these treatments later on in more detail. The last thing I'm going to talk about today, and I'm just going to touch on this, is the gastrointestinal
has joined the conference,
which is the system that starts in the mouth and ends in the anus. As I've already mentioned, it involves swallowing, and movement of
Raj Kapoor
Yes, I'm talking about constipation.
has joined the conference.
Anyone experienced that out there? I bet there are lots of you who have and still do. So, topics for the future with these discussions will be slow gastric emptying. What the heck does that mean, and how does that impact on your Parkinson's? Well, it impacts a lot. There's lots we can talk about with respect to that. Constipation, sexual dysfunction, bladder dysfunction, problems with sleep, and pain.
Has joined the conference.
Stay tuned, as we will be talking about all of these things in much more detail as we go along for the next few months. Now I'd like to get to some of the questions that I have already been asked. One question is on pain and Parkinson's disease. It is important to look into other things that may be causing your pain, such as arthritis and lower back pain. You can't blame Parkinson's for everything. It is often the culprit with lots of things.
Has
but
joined
not
the conference.
So please ensure that you look into other possible causes of the pain. Despite what you have been told, there is pain related to Parkinson's. It can feel like stiffness, cramps, spasms, muscle pains. Some of you may have all of these symptoms all at once. 1/3 of people with Parkinson's have pain of some kind. Again, that's a very high incidence. Legs are usually most commonly affected. Pain in Parkinson's is often related to muscle rigidity. Well, we're right back to where we started today, talking about stiffness and rigidity, because muscles aren't getting messages from the brain due to loss of dopamine. Sorry if I'm being redundant, but it's really important that you understand what's going on. To observe pain when it occurs is very important. Does it occur when your medications need to be taken again? Because the problem of what we call wearing off, which is when your symptoms get worse just prior to your next dose of medication, in other words, your 8 o'clock dose isn't lasting any longer until 12 o'clock. And if you're getting something like pain around 11 or 11:30, this is very important to be able to report that to your doctor. You could stretch muscles. Sometimes massage and warm baths might help. But again, if your pain is severe, you can start by talking to your doctor about what's going on, maybe getting permission to take one of the over-the-counter medications, such as Tylenol. But again, if your pain is severe, Speak to your doctor, as it's often a sign that your medications need to be increased. My next article in Livewire will be on pain. So again, stay tuned for more information about that. Another question I have received is, what do we understand about weight loss with Parkinson's? Is it a matter of not metabolizing the food we eat? I know that some people with problems swallowing don't eat sufficient amounts of food. That is not the case with me. Looking forward to the telephone experiment. Thank you very much for the question, and I hope that this is going to be beneficial for all of you. So this question is correct. Weight loss can occur for those with swallowing problems because they're not getting adequate nutrition. Also, if people have severe dyskinesia, that's the involuntary movements. I call it the funky chicken, where people can't sit still no matter how hard they try, which, by the way, is a side effect of medication. That's not Parkinson's disease, a side effect of medication, those wiggly wobbly movements. Anyway, back to the topic. If people have severe dyskinesia, they can sometimes lose weight because they're always on the move and burning calories that way. Unfortunately, weight loss for no obvious reason does occur but is not well understood. It is assumed that this sort of weight loss is usually related to advanced symptoms of Parkinson's. It is important, however, to have a thorough physical examination to search for other medical conditions that could be causing this. Yes, can't blame Parkinson's for everything. Another question I have received. Deals with a lady who was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2010. She has had several bouts of bronchitis over the past few years. Now she has a chronic cough. She said it sounds like a smoker's cough, although she's never been diagnosed or has never smoked, I should say. Her cough and bronchitis bouts be related to Parkinson's. Again, there is a high incidence of serious chest infections in patients with Parkinson's. Again, something else that's unexplained. But an impairment to the cough reflex may have a role. So what's the cough reflex? Well, if you put your hands on your sides and have a little cough like this, you should be able to feel the muscles in between your ribs expanding and then contracting as you hold your rib cage. Unfortunately, those muscles are often impacted when it comes to Parkinson's. So again, the cough reflex may have a role. This is a very broad question. As I've said, it is unexplained. The good news, however, is that there is research being done. Okay, on to the next question. Oh, sorry. The person who asked that question also said that she sometimes jerks, gets contractions when she relaxes at night, and starts to fall asleep. That jerking of muscles is very common. Lots and lots of people with and without Parkinson's have that. Basically, it's just that the muscles do begin to relax and then suddenly tighten up again. But that's not just in relation to Parkinson's. She also says that she does not sleep well. And what's the best remedy for being able to sleep, or for being unable to sleep, I should say?
Oh, strange man come out here.
The reality is that sleep problems are very huge. And when I say that, what I mean is there are lots and lots of reasons why people sometimes fall asleep to begin with, fall asleep and then waken and can't get back to sleep. Some people thrash around in their sleep, and heaven help you if you're a care partner with someone with this with someone with Parkinson's who has this what we call rapid eye movement sleep behavior disorder. Isn't that wonderful? At any rate, problems related to sleep are very, very maximal, and what I am planning to do is address sleep in one of my presentations to try to help you all to understand what might be going on in your particular case. Another question I've received is diabetes a complication of Parkinson's? The answer to that is no. Diabetes and Parkinson's disease do not have any relationship to each other. One thing I will say, however, is that sometimes people understand the relationship between dopamine and Parkinson's disease if they understand the relationship to insulin and diabetes. So, just for a second, I want to divert to a medication issue, and then I'll get back to other questions that I have received. So, those of you who may be familiar with or know anybody who has diabetes, you will know that the reason that they have diabetes is that for some, as yet not well explained reason, their pancreas has become somewhat lazy and underactive. So their pancreas isn't producing enough insulin to counteract the amount of sugar that they eat, and the symptoms of diabetes do occur. Well, not unlike that, the brain is not producing enough dopamine when it comes to Parkinson's disease. So with insulin, we can treat diabetes very effectively. With dopamine, levodopa, Cinnamon, if you may be taking another medication that is called, hang on a second, I'm having a senior moment. Prolopa would be the word I'm looking for. Sorry about that. That's a dopamine. Those are dopamine replacement medications. So I just wanted to sort of help you to understand how important dopamine is for people with Parkinson's and why it's important. I will be doing a much more thorough presentation on various medications and their role with Parkinson's disease, but today, again, this is a very just overall global general presentation. Another question. This actually is a very specific medication question, and I need to be honest with you right now and say that I am not qualified. It is totally unethical for me, unprofessional for me, outside of my nursing purview, to be able to answer specific medication questions. The question from this person, however, is that they were diagnosed approximately 6 years ago. They take their Cinemet. They take 100/25 5 times a day. And recently, they've added another medication called entacapone to their Cinemet dose to try to spread out the effect of their Cinemet. This individual has some dystonia.
And join the conference.
And I don't know where they've heard that entacapone, which is a combination type medication, may be causing it. So while I can't comment on that, and the only comment I do have for this person that's asked this question is that you must ask your doctor. You must report your symptoms to your doctor and ask your doctor for advice as to what you should do. I cannot respond to that. But one thing this question has pointed out is, quote, I wonder about reducing it, unquote. So I will just address that right now, because I would never, ever advise those of you with Parkinson's and or your family members to do anything with your Parkinson's medications without asking the doctor. Brains are very, very sensitive organs. Brains get used to certain things. And if you withdraw things, in particular medications obviously, from them, you can get into much more trouble than you were in the first place. So please, please, please stop, discontinue anything to play with your medications unless you have to vote. Ask your doctor for advice on that. So again, please don't do that.
The leader has unmuted your line. The leader has muted your line. To unmute your line, press #6.
Exercises for those living with Parkinson's who are not always able to get out to exercise classes. They would like to know if there are exercises
Don't lay down. Obviously, this isn't important enough.
Time. The answer to that is yes, there are some exercises that can be done in the home. We have a brochure here at Parkinson'S Society. You can write again to my CEO, Diabeetus, and request an exercise brochure, or you can give us a call on our either 1-800 number, which is 565-3000, and ask to be put through to either my colleague Robert or myself, and we would be happy to send you out a brochure. The brochure has pictures and very good explanations about some exercises specific to Parkinson's disease. We also have a DVD that was actually put together several years ago. But the reality is that exercise can be done in the home, and exercise for people with Parkinson's doesn't change a great deal over time. There are many different types of exercise. Tai Chi, we know, is very beneficial for people with Parkinson's as well, so Tai Chi classes can be helpful. But the bottom line is you need to find an exercise that you enjoy. As human beings, we will just not do anything that's sustainable, even though we know, quote unquote, that it's good for us. We will not do anything sustainable if we don't enjoy it. So try to find something that you really enjoy doing. Walking is an excellent exercise, as is swimming. There are a myriad of things out there where you do it. So another question I've received is, do you know of any persons with Parkinson's who have qualified for the disability tax credit? The short answer is yes. But again, the questionnaire goes on to say, how disabled do you have to be to qualify for the cumulative effect of what they consider to be significant or severe impairment in more than one daily activity? This is something that I will also address in a future topic. My colleague Robert Tersteeg here at Parkinson's Society is my guru when it comes to anything related to taxes, and in particular disability tax credits. So I will probably, if you call me, I would refer you to Robert, but I will provide some information related to this in the future. Another medication that I have received are, what are people using?
Has joined the conference.
And what are the amounts of each taken on a daily basis? This individual goes on to explain that they're currently taking their medications 5 times a day. And again, I can't comment on what everybody is using, but I will talk about medication as a general topic. Everybody with Parkinson's is different.
You are. Your eyes are closed. There's no
eyes are closed. Yes.
Is different over time.
And I'm trying to listen.
We just simply cannot address your very specific medication questions, but maybe the general topic of medication, once it's covered, will help you to have a better idea of how Parkinson's medications work and what might work for you. An
The leader
individual
has unmuted your line.
some days because
The leader has muted your line. To unmute your line, press #6.
medicated. Well, that could be the case. Again, this is a topic that is very important to discuss with your doctor, and sometimes the not very with it feeling may be a Parkinson's symptom. People often tell me that sometimes they simply feel like they are in a fog, and often those days or times of day are related to when their Parkinson's medications are at a low ebb. They don't have enough medication on board, and sometimes we liken this to not having enough gas in the car tank.
Or lunch.
Gas in your car tank can often mean your car obviously will not go. Well, no dopamine in your system may indeed mean that you don't go either, including fogging and symptoms of being foggy in your brain. We'll deal with that again. An individual has written also about
Has joined the conference.
severe other medical issues within this past year, including a heart attack, pneumonia, C. difficile, etc. And she says that her neurologists say that her Parkinson's symptoms that have increased, that this will be temporary. But she's concerned because her walking has gotten worse. And so she's just not sure now if this is an actual temporary or temporary glitch and where she will improve, or if this is indeed progression of the disease itself. Again, I can't answer that question, but I think that her next comment is very valuable because I think many of you have this same fear. And her quote is, "I fear I'm losing my independence." I understand that fear of this is very great. It's very common. It leads to problems with symptoms that we, again, are going to address in future presentations, such as depression and anxiety. These are huge topics that I plan to address in more detail later on. But again, I think fear of becoming a burden on your family, for those of you who live alone, whether family members live far away, your fear of having to be dependent also on others, on strangers, I think that's a very, very common fear. So while I can't tell this particular person whether or not her current symptoms that have increased as a result of all of her other medical issues, whether she will indeed improve, the reality is that she needs to find somebody that she can talk about her fear of losing her independence. Sometimes people with Parkinson's need counseling going forward, and that's a very important aspect of dealing with Parkinson's and very important to be able to share with others. She also mentions that she feels sometimes that she really hates her disease. So again, this speaks to a very common feeling for many people with Parkinson's disease, and that is anger. Why me? Why did this happen? And is there eventually an acceptance? Well, the reality is that most people with Parkinson's, in fact, I don't think there is anybody with Parkinson's that doesn't go through, with the why me's, the depression, the anger, all of those things. It's actually a grief reaction. When you lose someone in your life, you go through the whole thing of, this can't possibly be happening. This isn't real. And next may come, why is this happening? Why me? Why did this happen? Why did my loved one die? Why did my dog die? Why have I lost my job? Why is my marriage falling apart? All of those things, the sort of why me aspect. then comes the sadness with the reality of what's going on. And eventually, working through all of those stages of grief, we do end up in a place of acceptance. So I really think that there is such a thing as acceptance when it comes to Parkinson's disease. But it's important to understand that there may be lots of things that happen between denial, which is this can't possibly be happening, and acceptance. And also, these things are not happening in a chronological order. Sometimes you have denial, and then you have anger, you go back to, you may go on to depression, various things. But again, the whole grief process is something that needs to be addressed. I will do so. So at the moment, it's about approximately 1:45, and I'm just going to check with Debbie, who's sitting in the room here with me today, to see if indeed we have any more questions. Oh, actually there is one more right now, and Debbie says there's one more coming. Okay, sorry. All right. The question I've had from somebody is about foods. What foods do you encourage that will help increase dopamine? Well, the reality is that there are foods out there that increase dopamine, that have a lot of dopamine. Let's put it this way. They're not going to increase your naturally produced dopamine, but they do contain dopamine. And one of those foods that you may have heard about are fava beans. Now, I need to tell you something very important, however, and that is there is no quality control when it comes to the amount of dopamine and fava beans. So, maybe today, if you eat fava beans, you may only need to eat 2, because those 2 fava beans contain lots of dopamine.
Fava.
The other thing is that tomorrow you might need to eat a whole pound of fava beans, because there's no quality control with fava beans. So you may be trying to rely on something that there's no quality control over. At least with your medication, your levodopa, you know that it has gone through stringent quality control. There is exactly either 100 or 200 milligrams of dopamine in every pill. So you know what you're getting. So please never, ever, ever think, oh, well, I can stop my Parkinson's medications and just take fava beans. Not so. Okay? You'll either get too much or too little. So, yes, there are foods that contain dopamine, but not very reliably. The other question from this person is decreased exposure, not increased, but decreased exposure to chemicals and pesticides and a concern? Well, not that I know of. Certainly we know when it comes to an increase in exposure to chemicals and pesticides that there are environmental toxins out there. We don't know what they are, but we know that people who live in very toxic environments, whether it's even on farms, that there's a higher incidence of people who have been exposed to chemicals and pesticides. The problem is we don't know what those chemicals and
I can't stand
are.
that. I don't have to look at you half dead. Go.
So anyway, I don't understand the is decreased exposure to chemicals and pesticides, if that's the question. So again, maybe that person could write again and give me more of an idea of what it is that they want. So now I'm going to look at some of the other things that have come in. This individual was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Just give me a second here. I have to just get a computer in front of me. Okay. This individual was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2001, and this individual weighed 265 pounds at the time, and they stayed at that weight until about 1.5 years ago when they started to lose weight, and now they're down to 220 pounds. And this person's dyskinesia has increased significantly. So this speaks to those wiggly wobbly movements that I
Has
told you
joined the
about.
conference.
Things like Michael J. Fox, if you've seen him, he never stops moving. So that may be why this individual has lost some weight, because they're always on the move. So the question is the sudden weight loss a common occurrence? Well, we've talked about that, and if the person who asked this question could write to me again, and or I will go into more detail, because for those of you who listened or who were on the call when I talked about weight loss, I don't want to be too redundant. And the individual is also saying that their dyskinesia has some back or muscle problems, and he's wondering if his particular syndrome is common. So again, I will deal with this particular individual as we go forward with more details, because it's a very specific to him type of issue. Is that all the questions for the time being? Okay. So if any of you have a computer and have questions, we do have a few minutes to go before 1 o'clock. At least my biggest concern today was that I wasn't going to have enough time, but it turns out that I'm actually a few minutes ahead of time. So if anybody has a question, write to DEBBIE
Has joined the conference.
VIS at PARKINSON.ca. What I will say, just in the interim, for those of you who weren't on the call initially, because this is our first kick at the cat, because this is the first time at trying this, there will have been some glitches today. We will try to iron out these issues between now and the next time we do this, and if that isn't possible, we may have to go to a different format, but at least we're going to work on some of the problems that we've encountered with you today.
One last question. Is your immune system compromised by Parkinson's? That's the last question.
Okay, so the last question I've received is your immune system compromised by Parkinson's? The reality is that certainly having a chronic progressive condition for many years does compromise the immune system. You just don't have the same immunity, the same sort of fight within your system, within your body, as you used to have. Does that mean that you will be subject to all kinds of problems and that people around you should walk around with masks, etc.? No. Just be aware that you may indeed catch colds more easily, have more respiratory problems, maybe have more chest infections, which could be, of course, related to issues with swallowing and quote-unquote things going down the wrong way, aspiration, pneumonia. All of those things could indeed happen more frequently, so you just need to pay attention to some of those things. And if the person who asked that question has any specific problems, don't hesitate again to as to why you're asking that question, as this could be another topic for one of our lunchtime chats.
Do you have time for one more?
I do.
Does exercise increase dopamine?
Does exercise increase dopamine? Good question. No, but it doesn't actually increase the amount of dopamine that you have. But what it does do is that it stretches and strengthens the very muscles that your Parkinson's is trying to take from you and trying to make you stiff and slow and rigid. So it doesn't really increase the dopamine, but it does increase your very symptoms that the lack of dopamine is trying to produce and challenging you with each and every day. I am going to do a chat, not the next one, because the next one we're going to deal with, I've already told you, sort of all the system, the gastrointestinal system, and why you're having problems with constipation and issues with walking and all kinds of things. At any rate, one of the things that I definitely do plan to do a whole session on is exercise and why it's important. My experience tells me that if you understand what is going on, why something is important, rather than just people telling you exercise is important, then you will have a better understanding of, why you need to do it, and therefore you will be more willing to do exercise and stick with it. It's important. In fact, there was a congress that was held in Montreal last year. Actually, it was in 2013. I forget, we're in 2015 now. Sorry, my old brain. But the reality is that at the end of that, the major conclusion was that even the Parkinson'S specialists were willing to admit that exercise is as important as your medications. Not sort of 60-40, not 70-30 medications versus exercise, but truly 50-50. Medication is as important. So if you don't use it, you will lose it, so get off your butts as soon as we get off this phone. And I don't suggest in this weather that you go out and run a marathon, but please keep moving. It's essential, not just important, it's essential.
So one question just came in, and it only said hallucinations persistent, ?
Okay. This is a huge topic. So just so you know, hallucinations are when people either see things, hear things, feel things, smell things, or touch things that are not really there. The most common type of this psychiatric issue, Parkinson's, is that many people see things that are not there. That's the most common type. Some people with Parkinson's hear things that aren't there and have some of the other types of hallucinations. But seeing things that are not there usually are very, very common. So, again, the reality is that it is very, very common. Now, I think this question, I'm just going to double check with Debbie. Did you say, is persistent? Is that the question?
Hallucinations persistent? ?
Okay. So hallucinations basically are a symptom of Parkinson's, but not everybody with Parkinson's has this. Sometimes they're what we call latent. So they're there, but when someone takes medication such as levodopa, it brings out the hallucinations. So the reality is that they have to be dealt with. Now, when I say that, what I mean is it depends on how severe the hallucinations are. In other words, how much are the hallucinations bothering you? So, if you're seeing, for example, little animals or little children or little anythings, and they're not particularly bothersome, those are called benign hallucinations. If they're not bothering you, why would you do something about it? It's the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, or don't try to fix it. So, not all hallucinations require or treatment. However, regardless of the hallucination, whether it's small children or seeing things that aren't there, or, things changing shape, you think that a lamp or a tree it becomes something, or a tree in the backyard becomes a bear or something, and if the hallucinations are bothersome and are frightening for you, then they do need to be treated. And you do need to talk to your doctor about this. Again, don't do anything related to your Parkinson's until you've consulted with your physician. But it could be that the doctor will suggest reducing one of your medications. They don't usually start with levodopa. They usually look at your medication regime because it could be one of the other medications that you're taking that are bringing out these hallucinations. Okay? So again, talk to the doctor, because if your hallucinations are impacting your quality of life, they do need to be treated. And there are a couple of things. Medications can be reduced, but of course, the very medications that you're taking for your Parkinson's are keeping you walking and keeping you moving. So that might not be the most obvious choice. It might be something that's tried, but if it increases your stiffness and your slowness too much, well, you don't want to go there either. So the other good news about hallucinations is that there are other medications, antipsychotic medications is what they're called, and they can often be very helpful and will reduce the hallucinations. So again, how much are they bothering you? Is there treatment? Yes. Or not. That has to be a discussion between you and your doctor. The last question for today, because we're getting on to 1 o'clock now, is if there's anything can be done about perspiration. So the next presentation that I do is going to be talking about the quote-unquote autonomic nervous system. That's your automatic nervous system. And comes under the umbrella, perspiration, I should say, comes under the umbrella of this automatic or autonomic nervous system. The bottom line is your thermostat's broken. So heat regulation, whether we're too hot and need to cool down or whether we're too cold and need to warm up, that thermostat in people with Parkinson's is defective, for want of a better word. Is there anything that can be done? Well, unfortunately, not very much, although, again, sometimes an increase in medication can help this to some extent. I will address this issue next topic, but unfortunately, it's just not something that is within your control or within the control necessarily of the medical community to be able to deal with. I've certainly known people with Parkinson's in my career who have literally been sweating all the time. It's for some women, especially, it's like going back to menopause and hot flashes all the time. They wake up completely soaked, their bed clothing completely soaked. And this can happen to men as well. Okay, it's 1 o'clock. Thank you so much for calling in today. I do hope that you'll find that this has been somewhat beneficial. We would appreciate your feedback as well on how this worked or didn't work for you. After all, this is about and for you. And we look forward to speaking with you again on the second Tuesday.
February 10th.
February 10th is the date. Okay? Bye, everybody. Thanks for calling.